Happy New Year, everybody. We are live with our first interview show of 2022, although I was live yesterday with a different interview show, but that's like my Tuesday coffee chat show. This one, I thought it'd be fun to bring Toolman Tim on to talk to y'all. This is Toolman Tim about Toolman Tim things. And here's part of the motivation. So Toolman Tim did this really cool thing where he did 24 hours of radio, which he may never do that way again as long as he lives, because he probably got no sleep and is tired still over New Year's. And he just gathered a bunch of content creators and ran it like a radio show, which was pretty cool. I got to participate in that. I got to hear content creators I hadn't ever listened to before because I was working on a bathroom redo. Just had it going on my TV in the background. And part of why I loved it was that what he did was draw attention to other content creators and gave them a boost. And we gave him a boost, I hope. So it was like two ways, but a lot of people get into content creation and start getting sort of jealous of sharing their audience. And we have an ecosystem growing that is different than that. And I love that. But the other thing is, so I wanted to talk a little bit about how that was and what the motivation there was and some, how to build a channel, because a lot of people are interested in that. But the second thing, and the second reason I brought Toolman Tim on, is I've been getting a lot of scared communications about 2023 being a really hard year, being the worst year, economic crash, gloom and doom. And I know that Tim figured out how to set up a life that made it through hard times when times weren't tough, but they were tough for him.
Yeah.
And I thought we could talk about some of that, like the mindset you want to have before hard times hit, whether it is a housing market crash, a recession, a depression, rioting in the streets, food shortages, whatever it could be. Because I think the mindset going into a situation like that also is the same mindset that makes you successful anytime.
Yes.
So, yeah. So that's why I have Toolman Tim on. And I did rattle on a lot as an introduction because I know that y'all have to make it through the 30-second commercial. And I didn't want to miss anything that Tim says. So let's start with, hey, who is Toolman Tim? And how did we get to know each other? Like, how did we end up here together?
Wow.
Fellow preppers. In solidarity.
Anyway. So, hey, thanks for having me. I think this is my third time just on Living Free in Tennessee. So I'm going to say, well, of course, it all goes back to, the family tree of the Survival Podcast. That seems to be where you could probably pick, I bet you, hundreds of content creators who have spawned out of the TSP, maybe even, anyway, but at least hundreds. So we kind of started, or at least I know we had some conversations on the Zello network, which I loved and I never have any time for. So sorry, guys. I wish I did, but you know how it is. So we got to kind of meet that way. And Nicole, of course, and I've told this story so many times, but for years, I never listened to female podcasters. And if I had a audiobook who was a female narrator, it's nothing sexist. I don't know what it was. My brain didn't register with it or something. And I talked to Amy Dingman about that. And so then I started listening to this crazy lady, Nicole Sauce, on her podcast. And I was like, wow, she's awesome. I love how open she is and shares her life. And so we kind of met through that. And we always talked about, my wife always used to joke about, it's time to meet our imaginary or your imaginary internet friends, Tim, because, and I thought, I started a business and I wanted to start some content creation. And so I was like, you know what would be good? I should go on Nicole's podcast. So I kind of interacted with her. And I think it was like November of 2019. And then I chickened out the last minute because I hadn't done anything like this in years. And I was like, nope, can't do it. And Nicole was nice enough to come after me and say, hey, come on back on. And so I did. And I launched my YouTube channel at the time, which started as how to start a handyman business and grew into this crazy community that was Toolman Tim's workshop. And I specifically launched it. It'll be 3 years ago next month on your podcast. And we've kind of gone down the rabbit hole ever since. We met in real life. I was at, she was gracious enough to have me speak at your spring workshop last year, Nicole. And then again at Self-Reliance Festival, which was an absolute blast. So, and that brings us to 2023 and all the great things that are going to happen this year.
Okay. So since that time, he was on my show and he had like 9 followers on his YouTube channel. And he did a series on how to start a handyman business with absolutely nothing. And the video production quality, how would you describe the video production quality of that series?
Well, I use the illustration of it's very similar to some of those videos we used to get from ISIS when they would, or possibly Bin Laden when he used to record them on a BlackBerry underground in a cave. They were pretty similar to, actually his content quality was probably a little better than mine, but I've improved. So if you can see, that was the beautiful green wall that used to be behind it. Still haven't painted it, but I now have a nice black background. So it all started because I started, I seen a quote the other day. Well, it's basically perfect is the enemy of the good, or perfect is the enemy of getting it done. And if you want to be productive and you want to get closer to perfection, it's just doing. And so that's kind of -4 followers. Yes, Pipe. And that's right. I've used that before.
Yeah. Well, and so what was impressive is a year later, how many followers did you have? Would you say?
About 1,500.
About 1,500. So he broke the 1,000 follower mark before I did, and I had a successful podcast at this time on YouTube. And it was because he was super consistent. He looked at what he did, learned from that, and made it better over time. And he did not fret about this video quality is kind of icky, right, or I should have edited that better, or I should have said that exactly the same. So when I promoted the show today in the small videos, did you see that?
I did, yes.
Okay. At the end, I make a freaking mistake, right? And I say the link is in the comments, but it's not in the comments. It's in the description. And I'm like, I mean the description. And instead of going back and re-recording that whole video, I just let it fly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get really wrapped up in letting things like that fly, and then they never get their stuff out.
So today, for instance, I responded to a troll, and I happened to catch the video. It was playing in the background. I edited it right quick. And at the very end, I left one of them stupid title placeholders in there, like put your title here. And I'm like responding to a troll, and I didn't. And I'm like, no, 2 years ago, I would have hauled that video down. I would have edited the whole thing. I would have re-upped. I said, no, it's all staying. So yeah, you don't let perfection get in the way of good, or you'll never start.
That pretty much describes my bathroom remodel project right now.
Yes. How's that going?
Well, so I've gotten a lot of encouragement. I've connected with people who have been able to help me on figuring out what to do with what I found. So that's been like having those videos out has resulted in, like, I've talked to a plumber about some things. I've talked to a structural person about some things. I already knew somebody who was structural. But when we opened the bathroom, there was a whole bunch of rot.
Okay.
So the original scope was this tub that's right outside my window right here that I bought for $600 on Facebook Marketplace. This beautiful clawfoot tub.
Oh.
I was going to replace a crappy one that's in there that needs to be refinished. And I thought, well, I'll take the tile out and put new tile in. So that was my scope.
Yep.
Like, how many days should that take? 4?
In theory, yeah. A long weekend, or a 4-day weekend.
I'm a slow tiler, so 4. So then we get in, and it's like, well, we think this floor joist singular is bad. So 3 floor joists came out, 3 of them. He's like, well, the good news is when you fell through this floor in your tub, you were only going to fall like 5 inches, because the clearance from the top of the floor to a BFB, which is big effing boulder, right?
Yep.
That requires a hammer drill and a saw and all sorts of other things to make it more clearance. It's not like just a rock I can dig out. It's like a school bus sized rock. I know where the other part of that rock is outside. There's 5 inches of clearance, and they use 2x4s as the joists.
Of course they did.
Because the goal, we figured out Mr. Cruz's goal with my house was that he was trying to make it as low as possible. And we've actually found calculations he did. So rather than get discouraged, we just gutted everything, found out the wall actually was no longer on the footing he put in for the wall. It wasn't load bearing. So it's, at least there's that. And he so we're like, what do we do? Because we can't put 2x6s in for floor joists, right? And we've got a clawfoot tub to hold up, and that's heavy. And it's a bathroom, so you want a tub in your. So we consulted with a friend and did some other things, and finally we used 2x4s as the joists. And the minute we made that decision, the disapproving people on the internet came out of the it's gonna ruin it. It won't be solid enough. They're gonna twist. It's gonna break all your tile. And I'm like, so the way we put these in, it's not like they're floating. They're pretty much almost like there is bracing under them, so they are in contact with the stone. And if the stone shifts, yes, my floor is in trouble.
But what are the chances of a school bus size stone shifting? It's you, yeah,
right.
If that happens, you got way bigger problems. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's the deal. I waited 2 years to start this project. I was in the middle of fixing another bathroom in my house that's just a toilet and sink, and I insisted that be done all the way. I insisted I have twice the amount of money I thought I needed for this repair.
Good call.
And then this happened. And because I can use another toilet in my property in my house without going outside to the outhouse in the middle of winter, which is cold, and not something I wouldn't do, but not super not super exciting, right? It's cold at night out there and dark. I'm not concerned about it at all. I think it's going great. We've reframed the wall. We've put the joists in. We learned something about subflooring I didn't know, and it's all coming together. And it's going to take, I think it'll be 2 to 3 weeks before it's done right now, because I'm working full time and I'm the person who does all the painting and tiling, and Tactical did the framing and the plumbing.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it'll be done. And I don't know, I've said it many times, and this took me years to understand, but you don't learn anything without being uncomfortable or being a little bit pissed off, right? And so, when you're done, I'm sure you'll have a whole new skill set that you didn't know.
Yeah. And, I'm looking on here. We've got, who we got here? I saw Strong Roots Resources was in earlier. Yep, he came and helped put joists in. Nice. And Ryan Steva, who's another person for our network, is coming tomorrow to help with the subfloor, because subfloor is really annoying to put in.
Yes.
Those big sheets. And I don't have time to help Tactical. Those two will do it together. It's like, I think 2 hands are better than 1 on that project. So that's the deal. And how does that relate to what I wanted to talk about, though? How do you set yourself up for resilience through hard times? Think about this. What did I do? I didn't get upset about joists being rotten. Why didn't I get upset?
Because you knew you could fix it, and you had extra money too. You had double the money you needed to start.
I had money set aside. I can't change that the joists are rotten.
Right.
And there's pretty much only one thing you do when you find joists that are rotten. Well, there's one of 2 things you do. You put it back together and pretend it never happened, and your house falls apart later.
Yes.
Or you fix the problem that's in front of you.
And I won't lie, I guarantee you 10, 15 years ago, there was times when times were tough enough that I just closed it up and I'm like, honey, we'll deal with this later. And that's a bad mindset to have. And it took me a long time to overcome it. But yes, you're right. And the sooner you learn that. Yeah.
Let's talk about that mindset. So I know at one point in your life, you were barely making it.
Yes.
Why?
We got married young and had lots of kids at a young age. Tried to survive. I got thinking about it the other day. There was a time when we were first married that I made $550 every 2 weeks. So we had $1,100, and our rent payment was $550. Yep. So that left, if my math is correct, $550 for food and everything else. And somehow we survived. We got by, and
times were different then.
Yes, that is true. That wasn't that long ago, 2 decades ago. But yeah, that's where it started. And we were in that mindset, and we had the mindset. I've got to say, we had the mindset that we were probably always going to be that way. No matter how hard. We came from an area where you grew up, and we always joked. Remember when 2008, the
Yeah.
recession? We never
Yeah.
really noticed in Nova Scotia where I grew up. You know, the business I worked at, it was made the same amount of money in 2008 that it did in '07 and '09 because times were just flatline. You know, we didn't know anything, and where we grew up, that was just kind of okay. This is, you accept it. You know, you're going to be living at a certain level just above poverty, and you just kind of thought, okay. And for us, the thing that absolutely changed was when I took that big chance of jumping on a plane with almost no money left. Well, really no money left in my pocket, with
Yeah.
a folding cot to sleep on at my in-laws, and came to Alberta to work in the oil patch. And all of a sudden I see all these other people who are self-made business people, and they worked their asses off and they've crawled up from nothing as well. And I thought, geez, maybe we could do that. It took,
Yeah.
it took flying 5,000 kilometers and not knowing. I mean, it's easy to look back now. It'll be 9 years on the 19th of January since we got on that plane, since I got on the plane. And it's easy for people to look back now and say, well, yeah, look, of course you were going to succeed. Well, we had no guarantees. I left Becky behind at a 3-story, 100 and some year old house with 5 kids, having to hold that house together for what turned out to be 5 months before she could come out with me.
Yeah.
So we had to take chances. And, there's times when you have to. And, John Willis talks about burning the bridges and burning the boats. And I think that's what we did, because we really didn't have an option. There was no plan B to come back at that point, because we were so far in debt and so far behind at that point that we didn't have the option of going back, because if we did, we knew we'd lose everything.
Mm-hmm. Did you own that house or rent it?
We did own it. Yes.
Yeah.
And we got in a lot of trouble with the bank on that. Let's put it that way. We got it cleared up eventually, but no, I'm being honest. We
should be honest.
Yeah, I know. We struggled a lot. And I mean, to the point where we were, borderline. We dug ourselves into such a big hole and ruined our credit so bad, but we have cleared all of that up since, and we've gone back and paid it all off. But it did not happen overnight. It didn't even happen over 2 years.
Nope. I dug myself in a less big hole, but a pretty bad hole, and managed to make it out without ruining my credit.
Good.
And the only thing that saved my rear end was that the housing market went way up and I was able to sell one. And because even when you quote unquote own a house, you don't really own it if there's a mortgage, right?
Right. You don't. Yeah. I mean, you're just beholden to a bank instead of a landlord at that point.
Yeah. And you have to fix everything that breaks. And then things started breaking.
Yes. That's what happened to us. The house was falling down around us. We took a mortgage out on it we didn't have the money to fix it. And then insurance came and said, hey, you need a new oil tank, a new furnace, a new chimney. And so and so we took the chance. And so it did not, it happened out of desperation, but that's what shocked us up and said, okay, you know what? We can do better than this. I think I was 29 or 30 when I hopped on that plane, something like that, maybe 30. And it was time to grow up. And, could we have done it where we lived? Sure, we could have. Absolutely. I think anybody can do it anywhere they live, but sometimes having that mental break or that mental snap where I've heard people say the ultimate life hack is to move away from where you grow up. And maybe that's true, because was it Mark Twain said the best cure for prejudice is to travel. And so sometimes out of your own mindset and your own community is the best thing you can do for figuring out self-reliance.
So when you changed, was it a fast overnight change, or was it sort of slow and over time in Alberta?
Yes and yes. I mean, first thing was making up my mind to change. That was,
that was before Alberta, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we were aware. I think we were at that moment, we were kind of just aware of the desperation and said, we need to do better. And maybe even going back a little further, I worked on a lobster fishing boat, the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And 21-hour days on boats going like this, trying to put bands on lobster claws, and that's I think what showed me that I really could work my ass off and I didn't mind it. And so that was the first step that kind of inspired me to do it. But so, it was 2017 when I started hustling, doing every little thing that I could. And it was an instant thing where I committed to taking all the work I could find and going after it. But it happened over probably 3 years before I knew that I was gonna, after a year I quit my job. So earlier than I should have, but that's fine. And
Yeah.
3 years in is probably when I finally knew, geez, we're gonna do this. And so then we took a chance and opened Becky's business from scratch and started all over again. But that has turned out to be a whole nother incredible blessing.
Yes. Yes, it has. And it's funny how that happens. I like, I love the stories about how we methodically build ourselves up to transition from working a job to running your own business. And you do both at the same time for a while until you have enough savings and your business is big enough. And there's just magic day where you move to the business and it's all seamless.
Yeah.
And then I talk to real people.
Yes.
And that's the advice they give. Because that is the advice you should give, right? Like, it would be way better to have a savings account when you move from a job to being responsible for your own income. And most of the people I know who have done that were up against it and had to do something different, did not have the savings, did not do it the right way. They're not sure how they made it through, but the need was so high that they made it through. The only person I know who did this transition right is Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast.
It's so true, isn't it?
That's crazy. Everybody I talk, including me.
Yes.
And so I've stopped giving that advice as take it from me. That's my advice. Yes, that would be the best way to do it. And if you can do it that way, do it that way. At the same time, if you find yourself in a hard situation where you have to just do it anyway, do it anyway. And that's when I talk about mindset in this episode, that's the mindset that has to. Jack already had that mindset.
Yes. And he did that. I mean, if you go back far enough to where he started working for someone else, he did kind of the same thing, just early on, and so he kind of learned, it was almost like TSP was his second business at that point.
Well, he didn't have to put himself, tens of thousands of dollars in debt to do it like the rest of us. Yeah.
Yes. But it's been a journey. Let's put it that way.
Well, what do you see happening in 2023 then? Let's talk about this gloom and doom, because we're talking about, there's the debate about, are we in a recession or not? Is one coming? Is it going to be a depression? Is our economic system going to crumble and communism take over? Is there going to be civil war on our soil? Are we going to war with Ukraine? Like, all of those things. And I imagine in Canada, it's the same. You're having all of those same kinds of discussions. What do you think of all that?
Well, let me first, did you ever listen to Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM, back in the 90s?
No, I think so, but not in a long time. Like, I can't remember.
Well, I got turned on to his stuff. He's, God rest his soul, cool individual. I'm pretty sure it was Scramblin' that turned me on to him.
Yeah.
So I started listening to every year at Halloween, he would do a Ghost to Ghost episode, which was, spooky and whatever. Yeah. So then I ran out of those. So I started going back listening to these episodes of his from the 90s. And some of them are like, one of them was I want to say the Montana militiamen. And anyway, it doesn't matter. But so these were news stories at the moment that seemed like they had the potential to ruin the world, right?
Yes.
And everybody they had their panties in a knot and their knickers in a knot, thinking this is the end of everything. And they had predictions every single day on all these old episodes that the US dollar was going to collapse, Russia was going to invade, China, blah, 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 India, blah, blah, blah. So I use that as the example that we thought the world was going to end since Christ was a cowboy, right? So, and you can't do anything about that fear. Do I think times are going to get tough this year? I think they probably will. That's why we've prepped. I mean, times have been tough for us for a long time. Do I think, and I don't even want to make a prediction about where we're going to end up, because it could go 100 different ways. We could be 30, 40 more years of floating along the way we are. And, I think inflation is actually finally slowed down a little bit. So that's a bonus, but it doesn't mean, I don't know. We go through these, when you look on societal growth from the start to the end, it just looks like a nice kind of curve. But when you're in the middle of these peaks and valleys, they can be scary as hell. So the best thing I can say is to set your life up to not be nearly as dependent on all of those peaks and valleys in society. And don't focus on it. Like, for instance, last summer, maybe it was, well, do you remember when the news was talking about we're going to have brownouts all across the country? You know,
oh yeah, the electric grid instability was last summer.
Was going to fail. That was the news topic du jour, right?
That's kind of still going on here. Attacks on substations now.
Yes,
here.
That's the new one. Before it was, you know. So I did a deep dive episode onto that, and I said, listen, here's the deal. They release that report every single year. This year, it had some nice dark red right down the center of the continent that made it look really scary. So everybody grabbed it and ran with it. I said, here's the deal. Let's prep. Let's get you set up with a generator or some way to have backup power so that your life's better, whether the grid fails or doesn't. And guess what? When it was predicted to happen, it didn't happen. So worrying about it ain't going to do you any good. C.S. Lewis, this is one of my favorite quotes, and I've used it ever since COVID started. Can we use that word yet? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't care. I don't have strikes right now.
Yeah. Okay. So student comes up to C.S. Lewis and says, hey, how can you survive? They've developed the nuclear bomb. I'm scared shitless. And he says, how can you even want to do anything? And he said, listen, for years, back in the first century, second, whatever, little communities were at the nature of Vikings could show up tomorrow and wipe you out, right? Life always gets messy. Shit always happens. I grew up in an evangelical home who was scared that the rapture could happen like that. And I was paranoid that everybody was going to disappear when I was a little kid. So you can't live with fear. You got to get your eye set on, you know what we did this year? We built the business. We bought 10 acres of land in Tennessee. I spoke at 3 events down in the States. I took tactical rifle training at TAC Response. We did all the shit that made our lives better so that if things are really, really bad in 2023, then hopefully it won't affect us quite as much.
Yeah, you have an escape hatch now with that 10 acres, right?
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Except for the part where we don't allow you in for more than 6 months a year.
Right. And that's, at least you allow me in, right?
Yeah.
We can, you can go from there.
Okay, so my grandfather was Canadian.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, my dad's father was Canadian, and the way he became a U.S. citizen is they drafted him into World War II, and he went through boot camp, and they swore him in as a U.S. citizen because they couldn't send him overseas. They didn't think from the U.S. as a Canadian, and so he became a citizen because of World War II. But in those days, you could just live full-time here from Canada, whatever.
Right.
And he was already married to my grandma, I believe, when he was sworn in.
Well, I hope they don't draft me into World War III. Let's put it that way. So.
Yeah, no. I mean, well,
I'm being an asshole.
My grandfather was also out of the age scale of when you would be drafted, but they drafted him anyway because our county didn't have very many men.
Everybody accidentally shot their toes off in a fire.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if it was a population thing. Okay. So.
Yes.
So that's a good explanation. I listened. So I'm behind. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and while I'm roasting coffee, I have a tendency to listen to podcasts. And I was roasting this morning before the show because orders needed to go out. And Jack Spirko said something pretty cool. And he said, we're one major disaster away from societal collapse all the time. And his point, because somebody said, housing crash. We're just one month away from the housing crash. We're one variant away from COVID being a true pandemic that really does wipe out 10 or 20% of the population. He said, we have always been one variant away, step away from the economy crashing, one bullet away from civil war starting, all of it. We are always there. And if you worry about that and forget it to live your life, right?
Yes.
Then you don't get ahead because you cannot control that. The state of living on this planet is that things are unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen next, and something can go wrong.
Right. And it's true. It's almost like we've spent years listening to Jack, because I'm really glad that you and he both added that we're always that way, because it's true. Things can always go sideways. And I'm just a big fan of, you know, it goes back to the whole circle of concern, circle of influence type thing. I'm concerned. I want to be able to, I want to be able to do all the things in my life that makes it better for me and Becky and the kids, hopefully my local community and the workshop community as a whole. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things, and they're like, it's so easy for us to get on here. That's why I always loved listening to you, Nicole, because, you know, people are always like, Nicole, you get your shit together. And Nicole's like, no, I don't. Let me tell you about what happened when my dog got sick. Right. So, and that's the way it is with us. I don't have all my shit together, but what I do is the more I talk about focusing on the proper things is just as much a reminder to me to focus on the things that I can fix in my real world and set up for a little bit of success.
Yeah. If we are not one day away from a new variant coming out, we are one day away for somebody somewhere in this world to have a terrible cancer diagnosis that changes their entire life, or to have a fire kill their whole family. We had somebody, there's a 6-year-old girl without a mom in our community because her house caught on fire during Christmas. She was at her dad's house. And I say this because these terrible things happen every single day. And for those people, that was the equivalent of a pandemic variant hitting you or a housing market crash. And it's horrible, and it's great when the community comes out to help people like that. But with that in mind, you cannot control that.
Right.
On the cancer side, we can live as healthy as we can be, but it might still come. On the fire side, I mean, look, I just put in, I didn't have smoke detectors in my house for 3 years.
I get it. I did that I get it. I do. We did it for years.
So, my Christmas present to myself was like, I'm hanging them myself. I have the carbon monoxide sensor, explosive fuel sensor going in, like all of these things, because what's most likely to happen at my house that's catastrophic, besides rot, which we're already dealing with, is the propane leak. Like I had a propane gas leak last week that we caught, and
it happens.
It happens, you know, so, and that could have been catastrophic, right? I bring it up because when you learn to silo that, when you change your mindset to, yes, I know that tomorrow might not exist for me, or it might not exist for somebody who's really important to me, and you're able to accept that and let it go and start living for today, that's the mindset you need to start being successful, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And because when you're thinking about all the bad things, you started a defeatist mindset real quick. Mm-hmm. And you also look at, because I guess the YouTube channel is a good example of that. But if a person, when you first start creating content, if you look and say, well, I'd like to be at 100,000 subscribers. Well, that's a massive mountain. But what you can do is, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to start a YouTube channel. And what are the right steps to do it? And then something that I've really struggled with, and I'm trying more, is to focus on only my own self-improvement, not some pie in the sky. I mean, I still set goals. You know, I have a subscriber goal, but my identity isn't tied up into getting to 10,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that's my next goal, is 10,000.
Right. And that's me too.
I want it this year, but if I get it this year, I'm not like I'm a failure.
Right. That was my goal last year. I knew I was going to hit 5. So I said, well, I'll set a goal of 5. I said, no, fuck that. I'm going to set a goal for 10,000 subscribers. And I didn't hit it. But you know what? I finished the year at like 6,200, which is more than 5,000. So I use those big goals to motivate me. But looking at the great, big, overwhelming picture can be very daunting, and it can turn you off. So start, you know, if you're looking at starting a business, because with all the junk we dealt with over the last going to be 3 years now, the biggest source of freedom for Becky and I was being self-employed.
Yes.
Because I get to pick where I shopped. I get to pick where I didn't shop. I get to pick which customers' houses I went into and which customers' houses I didn't. If I didn't want to work, it was okay, because, you know, so thanks, Ask Hermit.
Thanks for the subscription for everyone it was.
Yes.
Or both. Subscribe to us both.
Yes.
We're streaming on both channels right now.
Yeah. I thought I closed Telegram and it keeps opening. Sorry. Anyway,
That's okay.
yeah. So our biggest sense of freedom was that we built a business, and a lot of people say, "Well, that's great, but it's too late now." Well, it's not. Anything that you do, if you start today, you're 1% closer than you were yesterday. And
Mhm.
the stupid cliche, and I haven't found a better example of it, but the second best time to plant a tree or a garden is, well, today, right?
Yeah.
The first best time to plant a tree for shade was 30 years ago. But you can't cry over those 30 years you've already missed. You just got to look forward and say, okay, well, what's the first thing? Well, I go buy a seed. And what's the second thing? Well, I plant it, I water it, I make sure it gets lots of sun. I do all of the things over the next 20 years. And you might say, well, 20 years is daunting. Well, focus on the first week. And then you'll get hooked because you get thanks, Don Young. Oh, Don, yes. Oh, I love Don. He's a good man.
Thanks for the super chat, Dawn. Hope to see you in March.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He gave me a pair of scissors, like fold up Leatherman scissors. I still use them, but thank you, Don. Anyway. Yeah. So focusing on, just focus on the first few steps, and all of a sudden you'll get addicted, because I'm starting to realize that success in life requires a bit of obsession, and not in a bad sense, but anybody who decides they want to succeed at something, whether it's Olympics, sports, being the best damn air roasted coffee you're going to find, it doesn't matter. You have to be obsessed, which means you have to do it every day, to the detriment of, well, I guess I'm not going to be a balance beamer in the Olympics because I decided to be a content creator, right?
You got to choose it's trade-offs, right?
Yes.
I talk about that in the My Three Things approach. You have to have trade-offs. You can't be everything to everybody and still be successful. It doesn't work.
Never. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
And so when you decide you're going down a road, and it doesn't mean you can't jump off that road, and it doesn't mean that, because you're not going to end up where you think you're going to. When I started, I thought, oh, I'm just going to do, shitty jobs that nobody else wants to do for the rest of my life. Well, that changed a lot, because all of a sudden my business is a property management business, and it wasn't when I started. But that's the cool part of it. But you got to have a little bit of blinders on and say, every single day, you need to develop the superpower of doing something for your business, or doing something for whatever grade it is you want to do. And whether that's, getting up at 6 o'clock and shooting some videos for YouTube, or whether it's, I don't have any work today, but I'm going to watch some videos on YouTube to learn how to wash windows, or I'm going to go knock on a bunch of doors and say, hey, I'm new in town, I'm doing odd jobs. Is there anything you need? Or here's my business card, and here's a free 9-volt battery because it's probably burnt out or worn out in your smoke detector. Whatever it is, right? Something every single day. And all of a sudden, over the year, you'll be like, wow, I did a little bit every day. Now all of a sudden, I've got this huge growth.
Yeah. That's it. One step every day is 365 steps at the end of the year.
Right.
And usually when you take one step every day, some days you take more than one step. And in reality, some days you take a 0 day. Let's be honest, because those are important too. But, that's how I'm approaching the bathroom. That's why I keep putting almost daily video up about it. Like, this is how far we got, which wasn't very far. Or today we got really far. But we got, like yesterday, I knew I couldn't paint the whole bathroom in an hour and a half.
Right.
And I had an hour and a half. So I primed the back of the wall board that's going up so that it's a little more resistant to moisture. And I got that done while listening to a podcast on Bitcoin and learning more about Bitcoin. It was just, one step on that project, because that project's important to me. If you take that and orient it on yourself and what you're building right now to be more resilient in the next 6 months.
Yes.
In 6 months, you've taken whatever half of 365 is, right? That's how many steps you've taken. Nicole does not do math on the fly.
That's okay.
Also, number dyslexic. It gets pretty exciting sometimes around here when I throw out numbers.
And you know what? The other cool thing about that is, so if you wake up today and you say, well, I'm pretty sure the world's going to end in 6 months, or the finances are going to collapse, right?
Yeah.
Well, you do everything you can do each day for 6 months. The cool thing is that's a binary. So if it happens, you're already 6 months more prepared. But if it doesn't, you're all of a sudden 6 months ahead of where you could have been, and you just keep on going. And
Yeah.
what's it? What's the tagline? You know, making your life better if times are tougher. If they
Oh
are,
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yep.
That's yeah. And I think about it this way: when Obama took office, I became friends with a prepper who was freaked out that Obama was going to declare martial law after his last term
Oh,
and make himself a you know, it was like that fear. And the person sold everything
oh,
and
yeah.
moved and withdrew from society. And Obama eventually was replaced by a different dude in office.
It depends on who you talk to. No better, no worse. So, right? I get it.
And
Yeah.
and in that time the person had not earned money.
Oh,
And so they were worse off after 8 years than before, wherein had they stopped worrying about the the end of the world as we know it and started taking one step every day towards more resilience and less dependence on income from a job, for example,
right.
would have been in a better place. And the answer is not always get away from the job. I know people who should stay at their jobs.
Yes.
They should find more resilient jobs, maybe. But sometimes it's a better option for you. I had somebody on the other day who makes a lot of money. They're like, I will make money as long as I can. They also have a side hustle.
That's, yes, I was going to go down that rabbit hole because I used to say entrepreneurship was for everybody. And I've kind of changed my mind a little bit. I would say full time entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, but some form of entrepreneurship is for just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, if you start a side hustle that ends up equaling 20% of your income and your JOB goes away tomorrow, well, you still got that 20% side hustle that you could ramp up if you needed to.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of that. Because again, it's you're building insurance, right? You've got, and maybe you want to build a couple of side hustles, but even just the one is insurance that you have been going through the motions, and you know, because it's a lot easier to scale a business once you have a successful model going. And that
Yes.
could be something as simple as knitting socks for somebody, or, you know, going in and trimming people's shrubbery, that kind of whatever it is. But you can scale it up if all of a sudden, holy shit, my 40 hours or 50 hours a week is gone that I used to work for somebody. Now, well, okay, let's scale it.
The side hustle I would do right now if I had time and wanted to and it was a priority, and that part is not, because other things are different. It's a trade-off.
Yes.
I would go to all these people who've realized they need to become ketogenic eaters and offer them a keto reset at their house where they leave for the day. And I go through
Oh,
their kitchen and their pantry and get rid of all of the carbs and
yes.
make room for the different things they need to store. Maybe even help them with systems of storage. I'm not bad at that, despite the fact my house looks pretty cluttery. I'm great at pantry storage, and help them develop a plan for having a resilient pantry that meets their lifestyle, because a lot of the advice to get ready for the next 6 months or year that we're expecting food shortages, supply chain problems, more inflation, economic crash, like power station attacks, and like all of that stuff that's there. If you have a resilient pantry, it empowers you no matter what happens, right?
Yes. Yes.
And if you're following a healthier lifestyle of eating, having your pantry match that's important. The advice you get to get ready is to buy beans and rice and flour and store that, because it's dry and storable. But for me, that's terribly unhealthy.
Right.
My body doesn't do well. I mean, like, I eat a little rice sometimes, but my body doesn't do well with those things. And so having a storage shed full of it because it lasts 20 years is completely useless to me. So Letty's like, that's a great idea. Letty would be very good at this. She's a very organized person,
Right.
you know, and she could do that. Tori said, so anyway, that's those kinds of things come up. And I think the way you fall into those is you say, you see a need. I see that people struggle when they start keto with the fact they still have a bunch of crap in their house that they shouldn't be eating. Seed oils, sugars, candy bars, energy bars,
Very good.
popcorn, like all of that stuff. And if it's there, I know from my own journey, if it's here, do you know who's going to eat that?
Tim is. Oh no, I mean Nicole. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
And you know what time of day I'm going to eat that after being disciplined all day?
Yeah, I know. Right before
About
bed
10
or
p.m.
yep.
About 10 p.m. Yeah. So, a friend of mine joked once that diet starts at the grocery store. And I'm like, yeah, and it starts in your pantry.
That's true.
I literally will. I would have. So if somebody needed sprinkles for me for cookies for Christmas. Do you have any sprinkles, Nicole? I'm like, no, because I knew if I left sprinkles in my house that are sugar.
Yeah.
I am the person who might have actually started eating sprinkles because I was having a sugar craving at night.
I would go. Semi-sweet. I cannot stand semi-sweet chocolate chips, but if that's all I could find in the damn pantry,
Yes, you can.
yes, I should. I'm like a crack, or a Coke addict. Just wait, I'm like, just sniff the last little bit off the $100 bill. Like,
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
And I wanted, a thing I wanted to share. Like Letty said, great idea. You're always good at this. I try to do this too, sharing these ideas because we want people to steal all these ideas and run with them. And man, if you want to do like any of this, I even in my own town, I tell people all the time, there's room for 3 or 4 more all seasons maintenances because I turn down like 30 some snow customers. I want competition. I want other people to do this because it works. And I can only control my little tiny parcel of my world and make my money right here. So I want you to take these ideas, everything we talk about, and run with them because we're not possessive of any of this stuff.
Yeah. And if you're worried about coming into a time where more cash is better, which I think we are coming into a time like that,
yes,
and you don't have any cash, I'm starting with no spend January.
We did that a couple of years ago and it was very successful.
No spend. I mean, I am actually allowed to spend on my bathroom. Like planned expenditures are allowed, but if I need new ink for this pen right here, I'm not buying it till February to see, like, because it's so easy to jump on Amazon and just order it to be shipped. I really want a nutcracker. I don't want a nutcracker, but I have nuts with shells on them. And I don't mean like the kind you use, like the mouth kind from Christmas. I mean like one that works better. Those do work, but they have to be really well made to really work. And I was looking for a nutcracker all of December, didn't find one at the store. Didn't want to order one on Amazon for like shipping, and eventually I'll find one. But if I see one this month, not buying it.
Right.
Mental note of where it is, and then I can decide in February if I still want to crack those nuts. I'm not eating nuts this month anyway. But yeah.
You know what I like about that too is it forces your brain to come up with alternative solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been times I remember a while back, Becky had got a new shed from Costco, and when I assembled it, I needed to build a floor. And for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to make it a zero job. I call zero jobs that I can build something with whatever I have on hand.
Yes.
And so guess what? When I decided that, I all of a sudden found enough material around my yard to make it work. I had to get a little creative, but I did. I ended up making it in 2 pieces and joining them together because I didn't want to go buy 12-foot pieces of lumber. So you make things work.
Yeah, and I get this question, what about gas? Gas for me is a planned expenditure.
Yeah. I mean, you can't decide not to use your electric bill, right?
Right. Electric bill is a planned expenditure. If you're somebody who stores gas, you could use your store gas. That's up to you. I actually have gas on a cycle that it will continue on its cycle. So it's just for me, I just want to see like what kind of impulsy things am I just like it's easier to throw down cash that I don't necessarily need, because what happens when you just keep buying the things is not only does it cost you money, it costs you mental bandwidth and it ends up as clutter in your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in some ways it helps me see if I still want it a month from now, maybe I really want that here. And then if that's what's its purpose, and then how does it fit into the house? Because I've been approaching house reorganization starting in my kitchen from a permaculture standpoint in zones.
That's cool. I like
Yeah.
that.
Just the things in the kitchen I use every day are in the front of the drawer, and I have dividers, and the things I use once a year are in the back, rather than the things I use once a year are in a box in the storage. So that everything in my house that I think I'm gonna need in my house has a place in my house, but the easy to get to stuff is easy to get to, or the stuff I use all the time is easy to get to, and the stuff I use less often has a place, but it's harder to get to.
I like that.
Yeah,
I might have to implement that.
I just realized I spend a lot of time moving things from boxes to boxes at seasons.
We're bad for that too. John Willis sent me a short the other night on Instagram, and it was just really cool. He's like, check out this hand driver, and it was this guy had all his tools in one of these nice carry bags, and he sent it to me to look at the hand driver, like the little impact type driver. I ended up falling in love with the tool bag, and I said, you know what? I've used a toolbox for years, and you know how much time I spend wasting trying to dig out that adjustable wrench at the bottom of my toolbox? So I think I've decided I'm going to graduate to a big boy tool bag where everything's accessible and open because for that exact reason.
So he sent me a video today that's about the jet boil pack he made. So he made a video where he has it's perfectly sized for a jet boil, and he takes it out, and they're like making coffee outside. And it's the controversy blend, which Hollow Roast makes that.
Yes.
And I think that's why he sent it to me. And I'm like, well, the problem is now I want a jet boil bag because I travel. It's not a jet boil, but with a camping stove and gas thing that would totally fit in there and make my coffee on the road. I do that. So I don't have to have crappy gas station coffee. And I'm like, damn it, John, now I have to spend money.
Put it on your
I can't because it's January. I have to wait till February.
I think it was Hermit I wanted to mention too. They mentioned dog sitting. That's incredible. Of course, since we've got into sitting kids, now we're thinking, we could open up a dog sitting thing as well. So that's one of our next. We have 2 more businesses that we're looking at buying or building in the next little while, and one of them is animal sitting for sure because it's very rewarding and it's fairly low impact. You know, not a ton of upfront investment if you do it right.
Yeah, I got one of those stand-up tool bags because somebody gave me a gift certificate for my birthday.
Yep.
In October for my car to reorganize all the crap in my car that's there for what not reasons, you know, like emergency stuff and all of that. And I have a cigarette lighter thing that pumps up tires, for example, that I actually use that thing all the time.
Oh, I love it.
I have a tire curse, everybody. And but the problem is every time I need something, it's in a box. And there's the dig through the box thing that happens. So I've not gotten around from like putting the tool thing in to getting the things out of the box, but that's on my list this month.
It must have been in my garage because every time I need something, I have everything in milk crates underneath of my workbench, and you can see through the damn milk crates, and I still have to haul every one of them out to find the piece I need. So, it is what it is.
Well, let's go to this. Tori said, my issue is deciding on the side hustle. So, do you have any advice for people who are like, I know I want to do something. I want to take one step every day. How do I decide which step to take?
I don't want to be a dick. Just pick one and do it. I know. It's like, oh my God, don't be like that because, and maybe it's not that easy. And I know because you can suffer from analysis paralysis, right? Yeah. But if you need to sit down, set yourself a time limit and say, I'm going to start something in a week from now. So if that gives you a week to analyze it or a day to analyze it, whatever it is, you can put everything on paper. You can write down your pluses, your minuses, the positive, negatives, whatever you need to do to work through it mentally. But tell yourself in 1 week, I'm going to pick one and I'm going to do it. That creates a sense of urgency. And the cool thing is, here's the great thing about starting a side hustle. If you have 100 good ideas and you're passionate about all 100 of them, there's a really good chance you're going to succeed because you're passionate about it. You're going to find a way to make it work. Now, if you're a month into it, 2 months into it, and you're all of a sudden, I'm absolutely miserable. I hate this. I don't want to do it. Well, you know what's cool? You have 99 other awesome ideas you thought about that you could start with. So the key is, and I struggled with it too, is just starting something. And I know you have 100 good ideas. Every time I go to the dump, I look around, I'm like, man, there's all of these redeemable bottles. I said, somebody could go in there and recycle those. There's all
Yeah.
this copper. They have a great big burn pile that if somebody went in there and separated all the wood and cut it up, they could sell it for firewood. But guess what? I didn't act on any of those because I've already got enough things on the go. So it's tough, right? It is tough to decide, but give yourself a deadline and then pick one thing and do whatever you need to do to figure it out until then. But once you pick one, stick with it for a month or 6 months, whatever you have to decide, and then go back from there. Because you might find, hey, this only takes me an hour a day, and I have 3 extra hours a week that I could now, attribute to another side hustle. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I take it this way also, is start something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to start more than one something.
Yeah,
To
that's
figure out
true.
which thing you think is going to work. If you start too many somethings, though, you do end up in a pickle.
Yes.
And I've been in that pickle because I have a tendency to start everything. That's my personal battle, is learning not to start everything, right? And I'm better at it now than I was, but I had to go through the cycle. When I had the transition, it was like literally any way I could make $10, I was making $10.
Right.
For that first year, until I realized if I put more time somewhere, I could focus and make much more money per hour invested on coffee, for example, than hour invested on selling duck eggs.
It's back to that fear of missing out that we talked about as well. Like you have to, once you find the thing that's going to bring you the biggest bang for your buck, you really do have to commit to it eventually. Because if you don't, again, you're going to be doing every little thing for $10. And that was really tough for me because my business was based off of doing every little thing for $10.
Yeah.
And so when I started turning people down, it felt really weird at first, but I had to embrace it. Becky's like, hun, if you don't do this, you're going to kill yourself. Because
that's not good.
What ended up happening was I would agree to do something and then I couldn't get there because my big priorities were like, oh yeah, okay. So I had to start saying, sorry guys, I can't take on as much as I would love to do your snow this winter. I have this many customers committed and I can't take any more. And it's tough. It's really, really tough.
Yeah. Letty says figuring out what to charge is difficult. Sometimes you have to just charge something the first time.
Yep. And you'll know right away because or at least in the first month, because if everybody is hollering at you to come, then your price is too low.
Yeah.
I always use the 50-50. I kind of figured I always said if I'm quoting a bunch of jobs, if I get half of them, my pricing's just about right. But the cool thing is, here's the thing, and I've used this example a lot. So if you have 2 customers who come to you and they say, I need you to do this job, and you quote $100 to both customers, and they say yes to both, you've made $200, but you've had to do 2 jobs. Now, if you quote those same 2 jobs at $200 a piece, and one says yes, and one says no, guess what? You made the same amount of money, but for half the work. So you got to be a little uncomfortable with your pricing.
Yeah,
for sure. You have to, and you need to know because everybody's like, well, I'm scared I'm charging too much. You know what? In all the years I've talked to other entrepreneurs, almost nobody charges too much. Everybody's charging too little and they undervalue their time. My brother-in-law, after many years of me getting after him, took the big jump a year ago and started his own business. And I told him, I said, you're not charging enough by the hour. Guess what he did? January 1st, he put his rates up to where they should be. And I'm proud as hell of him.
Yeah. That is a hard thing. If you're sold out, your prices need to go up.
Right. There's a good one. Matthew. Absolutely. You know what? When I first started my handyman business, when it failed kind of the first time, $15 an hour is what I was charging. On average, I make about $100 an hour for when I'm working at this point. So that, yeah, absolutely. That you have to, because if you don't, you're not going to enjoy it. And you're probably going to end up crashing and burning eventually.
Yeah. But you start at one price. And what I do, like I launched something last year at a specific price and it's locked in for that price for the people who jumped there. One's
Nice.
my sponsorship, which I knew was underpriced, but I wanted to sell it out immediately, and it did. And I won't say what the other one was. And I've now done it a few times, and for those people, they keep that price.
Right.
And everybody else coming in, it is now double.
Yep. And that's a good way to do it. And I'm proud of you about the sponsorships too, because I know you almost had to drag yourself kicking and screaming into
I was
that.
like, okay, I'll launch it.
I have one sponsor, and I had no interest in sponsors, and they
Yeah.
came to me, and the price was a killer price. I didn't charge them much, but it
Yeah.
was awesome. It was great, But yes,
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, that's always been the plan for the show, and I always wanted it a specific size before I launched sponsorship. And finally it was just like, okay, it's time. I'm not quite where I wanted to be
Yep.
before I launched sponsorship, but the other thing is people who listen I have very loyal listeners to the podcast.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of burn, and I think other podcasts do. They have people who come in for a month or two and leave, and that's pretty rare here.
Yes.
I'm sure it does happen. Occasionally I'll say an F-bomb and somebody gets mad about that and they leave.
It's okay.
And it's okay. But most people who are drawn in, one episode, sure, they might do one episode and leave. Once they're drawn into a couple episodes, they tend to stay because they're on the same journey we are.
Right.
They want to be part of a network of doers. They want to build a better life for themselves no matter what happens.
And that's why, in some ways, a really committed audience of 5 or 10,000 people is worth way more. A community, sorry, I should use the word community, is worth way more than exponentially, of course, but some of the big creators that maybe are in the millions that, they can sell a lot of stuff, but you can do really well with a small committed community if you're willing to help and work through that, for sure.
Yeah. And the purpose of having that element in the community is, I think that without community, we don't endure.
Right.
And I see, I think we used to get that from our churches.
Yes, that's really good. Yeah.
And we've lost a lot of that over the last 80 years.
That's a good point.
And I think it comes from the school engineering, actually setting up they've set up communities that aren't communities, that are defined from the top down rather than the communities self-organizing in our school system here, because it's based on where you live. And then some are better than others, right, for achieving the goal of equipping these kids to be functioning adults and know what they need to know. And so then there's infighting between that, which makes more separation between people who might actually self-organize into communities better.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right, because the system has a top-down geographical community, which by its nature, communities tended to be geographical in the past.
Yeah.
But you had, every little town had 5 or 6 churches. You had a Baptist church, you had a Catholic church, you had a United church. And so people united around those and formed their own communities of mutual interest. And that's what really connected people. That's all.
Well, and then those would cross-pollinate into other organizations.
Yes.
Other community organizations. And a lot of that structure has been destroyed. We've let it be destroyed through government. And now we're using the internet to do what we naturally do as humans, which is come together as a community. And when you have a community that can count on each other, that's healthy, that can be the difference between we are one variant away from destruction and we are one variant away from that was a bummer, but we're here. Right. I mean, there's a certain point where if you have a terminal illness, you have a terminal illness, it's terminal and you die. But humanity goes on.
Right.
And the community goes on and your family and friends go on. And that's a good thing.
I mean, why do you think we bought land in Tennessee? It wasn't random. It was because we have people who we consider our absolute closest friends in the world who live there, right? I mean, that's what it came down to, is we've all made these connections. And like you said, if they're online connections, that's huge. But here's the funny thing, when I put together that 24-hour radio show, I pre-recorded 2 or 3 minutes before each episode.
Yeah.
And I just did an intro. If I only knew you online, I talked about our online interactions. But the cool thing was, I think I had 21 content creators.
Yeah.
And I know over half of them I have met in real life. And not
Yeah.
one of them, Chris Dixon lives the closest. He's a fellow Albertan and he's 5 hours away from me. Other than that, everybody's in the States. So when you make time to meet up with those people in real life and have, flesh to flesh contact, like here we are, we're sitting around chatting, there's something special about that. There's nothing better than that, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that the internet allows us to keep the relationships going that we would have had to do with letters 100 years ago, which was done. But so like for me, this technology is a powerful tool for keeping relationships, and I love it. But it can't replace real life.
No, absolutely. I mean, okay, how many conversations have we had face to face since LFTN? This way, like online, probably 6 or 8 or so.
Yeah, something like that.
That's pretty cool because I can promise you that. I don't like talking on the phone, never have, but it wouldn't necessarily have been as many phone calls, right? So it is a powerful tool, but you've got to boost it up with those in-person meetups as well eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I make time to travel. Like I am figuring out my speaking schedule for the year right now. And I've reached out to a few people who like to have me speak and have asked, am I speaking? Because I have a lot of incoming requests now. And I want to balance some of the key cornerstone ones that I usually speak at with some new ones and getting to know some new people.
Yes.
So I'm heading to a new one in February. It's called Next Step. I think it's nextsteps.info or next-steps.info. And their goal is to build a counter economy. They started with not liking vaccinations, not the vax for COVID, but just in general, the vaccination schedule for kids.
Sure.
And so they originally focused on health. And then, that whole world, I don't know how it is in Canada, but here, if your kids go to the government schools, they dictate what you put in your body when.
Pretty sure.
And you can get opt-outs, but then the whole medical industry insists that it's important. And I am not anti-vaccination. I am pro thinking carefully before you put anything in your body that's foreign. Yeah, pro-choice basically.
Yeah, sorry.
Like I have a tetanus vaccination.
Right.
And that was after looking into it. And I might actually get the shingles vaccination over time. I don't know yet. I've also had an autoimmune system reaction to a vaccination that I was told I had to have to travel to Thailand.
Oh, okay.
And it caused an autoimmune problem that probably would have developed when I was as old as I am now, 25 years ago, to come early. And so I am vaccine damaged or injured. And because of that, anytime any one of those comes out, I look at it very carefully. Well, you can imagine since 2020, I've gotten a lot of flack from people who are like, everybody has to take it. It's the only way out of this, blah, blah, blah. And so I like really relate to when somebody's trying to make a different, pro-informed consent is a great way to put that. It's very interesting to me, like that they started there and then they expanded out to, it turns out the monetary system's a complete sham. The food system, we better start homesteading and prep. Like it's gone from this vaccine, I think, is responsible for my child having autism. That's the motivator for the organizer of this conference to, it's a 4-day conference full of all of these different things. And we need a counter economy where we can interact with each other and opt out of the system, but still be comfortable. So I'm interested to see who I meet there. I'm either going to meet a lot of, we'll see.
I get it.
Going in with any preconceived notion, and I'm looking forward to it. I get to give a good, I think it's called Next Steps, and it's in Atlanta. It's next-steps.info. I have a coupon code that gets people 10% off. I think it's sauce10, but I can't remember.
I told this story the other day. I've got to say, probably the biggest influence in my life that you've had on me has been the willingness for me to interact with people who have very different opinions about a lot of things that aren't important. Because early on, I was very much a, like, the anarcho beliefs are what they are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
all the other side things that may or may not come along with it aren't
Yeah.
important. And I would throw the baby out with the bathwater with a lot of good people simply
Yeah.
because I thought maybe they had a wacky opinion about something.
Yeah.
And I've changed, and I need to thank you for that because it's
Oh,
it's
good.
huge. So I went to prepper camp this year,
Yeah.
and that was a very different community than the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop. And
Yeah.
it was very much we're going to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance, which was cool for a Canadian, right? So, but do you know what's awesome? I met incredible people there. I
Yeah.
made incredible contacts. I had the time of my life. I spoke 3 times over 3 days, and I'm going to go back to North Carolina. Does it mean I agree with everything? No, of course not. I bet you that I disagree with things from the Living Free in Tennessee,
Probably.
Self-Reliance Festival. There was
Yeah.
very much a dichotomy of people there, and that was really cool.
That's
Like,
on purpose.
yes, I loved it. But it takes time. You have to,
Yeah.
you have to get yourself there. But I'm going to throw that out there as well. It looks like I'm going to be down in that area for the entire month of September. I think I've got like at least two other engagements lined up. So
Yeah.
if anybody in September is looking for somebody, I'm probably going to be down there working on my property anyway. So
Okay. My Self-Reliance Festival is in October, dude.
oh yeah, is it going to be the same weekend?
It's October 15th, that weekend.
I could probably anyway. I'm sure we
Yeah.
can make it work. Maybe
We'll
we'll
talk
do
about it.
whatever. Anyway, but I'm just excited. I am all excited. So yeah.
Yeah, the next Self-Reliance Festival is March 25th and 26th. And Friday before, we have Refuge Medical coming in and doing one of the Responder 1 trainings.
Oh, wow.
And then I don't have 100% confirmation that Bear is staying to speak, but he thinks he's staying to speak. And I didn't want to push him over the holidays to commit 100%. So I don't have him on the website yet as a speaker for Self-Reliance Festival, but I think it's going to be a really cool one. Well, I always think they're going to be cool because I organize them.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I did, like, I am launching tickets by the end of this week, selfreliancefestival.com. And if you go there now, you can actually already buy the early bird tickets and some of them. I'm adding a digital ticket and some other stuff before I officially launch, and I'm changing the agenda. Like every day, it's the same thing, one step every day. Every day I change something else on that website with the hour I have to work on it. So
I love Self-Reliant.
I can tell you this, 10 minutes after I had the early bird tickets up, without saying anything to anybody, I had the orders starting to come in.
Isn't it? People are excited.
Yeah.
It's a fun event. And what I loved about it was big enough that you could be over here and talk to people, or you could sit in the tent and listen, or you could go, like, there was enough for different people that you didn't always feel like you needed to be right there.
Yeah.
And when you go to something like that, I want people to know you don't have to listen to all the speakers. You don't have to come and listen to me speak. Make your in-person. If you don't listen to any speakers, that's cool too. Yeah. Make your in-person connections, because that's
you'll talk to people and you'll meet people, and that's like we had Dawn, who's on here, Autumn Dawn Endeavors.
Yes.
She and Strong Roots Resources were running an information booth this time, and I think Dawn spent almost her whole event at that booth talking to people.
Right.
Not necessarily going to sessions. And there's a lot of value in that. One of the things that I'm different than many conference organizers about this, also at the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop, which tickets for that go on sale on the 14th at 9 a.m., guys. And they sell out that same day every year. So I recommend you get your tickets at 9 a.m. on Saturday, the 14th. It's a smaller group at the LFTM workshop, and we have great topics. And some people, like literally, like you did this, they sit under Taj Mahal and talk about ideas.
Yes.
And they go to maybe 2 sessions, and I don't get upset about that. Other conference organizers do. I'm like, no, they're doing what they need to do. They came here and they met somebody that's important, and that is so valuable. I think seeing speakers is valuable too, but you may end up picking and choosing what's important to you to watch this time. I went to a couple of Jack's workshops, and they were doing this aquaponics stuff, and I'm like, I don't ever want to have aquaponics here. I don't care.
Off you went, found somebody to talk to.
Well, yeah, and then now I have aquaponics here, and now I do care.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, okay, yeah.
No, I was like, it'll never be in my life. And so I missed all those. And then one year, David, his buddy, who lives more of a suburban lifestyle, has turned his suburban small lot into a very productive place for food. And I saw his setup, and it was very different than Jack's setup. And I was like, that's what I want.
Oh.
I want these systems that are automated and don't take a lot of care and look pretty, and one thing feeds another thing. And then he came up and put one in for me. That's why I have one. And then I learned about aquaponics, and now I got into hydroponics, and it's changed the whole thing.
David's an incredible dude. I met him for the first time at Self-Reliance Festival, and we just kind of clicked. And anyway, that's all I can say. But he's the type of guy that'll just, if he just starts, he shared information and give me like little pointers. And he always just has a little tiny, he's like, try this. And he has a way of giving it to you. And you're like, holy shit, that's so brilliant.
It's changed my whole life.
Yeah. like a 4-minute throwaway conversation,
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're like, I just need to record Dave when he's talking. That's how most of my interactions with him are.
But if you're listening to this
again, dude, I remember you said something.
Don't let it go to your head, though.
So when is LFTN this year? April 27th through 30th? Yes. Well done, Matthew. He knows what the last weekend of April means. That's the last weekend of April every year. Yeah. Those who are interested to know more, by the way, livingfreeintennessee.com is my website. And if you look under events and go to workshops, it has, some stuff put together for what's happening this year and when the dates are and when the tickets go on sale. So that's all there.
Nice. We had a blast last year. Loved it. It was way too much fun. And if you've never gone to an in-person event, a spring workshop like Nicole's is a really good one to start at, because what is it, about 80 people? We'll probably have 10 fewer people, so it'll be about 70 this year. Okay. And which is what?
I made a mistake on ticket sales day. We'll just put it that way.
It happens. Self-Reliance is what, 500 this time or so?
500. We can go up to 1,000. 500 has been the size the last two.
Okay.
And the early bird tickets, I have 300 of those released right now.
Prepper camp I went to was around 1,000, and the bigger the event, the different the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But if I had to tell somebody where to start, I would say start at a smaller event and get your feet wet. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I can go and be a little social butterfly, even if I'm not. But it's okay not to be the whole time if you're not that type of person, because you can go sit and chill and have a drink and listen to everybody do karaoke for a while too.
Every event I coordinate tends to be comfortable for introverts.
I can see that.
And that's because I'm an introvert. And a lot of people in our community are introverts, which means you're less likely to have somebody chase you into the woods when you walk off by yourself for a minute and saying, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? First of all. And there are usually a high percentage of people you can have real conversations with, which as an introvert, when I have like the conversations that are just surface, or when somebody's saying one thing with their mouth and a different thing with their body language, I find that stressful. And at the events I'm at and the events I coordinate, I seek to set it up with that it attracts genuine people who aren't going to do that. There's still small talk. That is what it is. But it's there. I just find the people attracted to these events tend to be easier to be around for introvert.
I can tell you, my wife, Becky, who is now a big part of the podcast, when we were walking down the hill the last night, down that, kind of windy driveway, and I was a little bit sad that we were leaving, and she looked at me, she said, "Hun, we finally found our people." And she's never gone to anything like that ever before. And she, these were people that she'd heard about a lot, but had almost no interaction with up until the weekend we were there. And she left. And I mean, that's the reason that we bought land in Tennessee, because it was a place where my wife felt 100% accepted. She left and she said, it wasn't like going to other events where you had bitchy women who are bitchy women or men who are, what I mean? It was just, everybody was there because they wanted to know about you and they wanted you to succeed. And that might sound cheesy as hell, but it's 100% true. And if you weren't there for that reason, I bet you won't be back because it wasn't your event.
Yeah. And that happens too. It is all outside. I actually had this idea yesterday.
I like
By
that.
the way, I heard you have Cook Mahaler up there. I heard that story.
I do, and it's held up. It held up. So thanks to Ken Esch because he, yeah. So when we left LFTN, I get home and Becky's like, honey, and I'm like, nothing good ever comes from honey, but it usually means my back's going to hurt. But
yeah,
she asked me to build a roof, and so I got some pointers from Ken. And yes, we have Cook Mahaler out back, and it is beautiful, and it is held up to well over a foot of snow, and then I had to rake it off. I've had to roof rake it twice, but thanks to Ken, it's held up really well. So
yeah, Ken builds some solid stuff.
Yeah.
So Taj Mahaler, I've always wanted some sort of retractable walls for it.
Ooh,
for when it gets cold. And the other day I thought, well, rather than retractable walls, why not make removable frames for walls and use plywood?
Yep.
Or something like that. So that if it's, because my April workshop can be hot or it can be cold, or it can be all of those in one weekend. And part of why Taj Mahaler exists is we get impressive amounts of rain here when it rains sometimes, like 4 inches in a day. And I wanted a dry place for people to stay that wasn't in the basement of base camp where our classes are, right? At night, so we could, hang out by the fire or whatever. And it's all open because I like the open feel. But now I'm thinking, like, I'd already told Tactical, I want to have some way to close it in, whether it's hanging billboard tarps or something. But I'm thinking about, is it just going to be this annual build that happens where we put the walls up for the event and take them down if it's going to be cold?
Well, funny you mentioned that, but we have a hot tub in our Cook Mahaler. We haven't done it yet, but we have looked at removable panels because, of course, we have really nasty weather 6 months, 8 months of the year. So I was planning on maybe using like really big, heavy eye hooks so you could have panels that you drop in and leave there semi-permanently. So that might be, anyway, but yeah, so absolutely something we're thinking about too.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll be brainstorming about that and then deciding if we can get it done between now and April. Usually the answer is yes, we can.
Always yes. Now, it can, do we have the time to do it? Right?
So, how much money am I spending on this thing? All right. Yeah. We do need retractable shade. That's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yes,
but I'm not sure that's getting done in time for that. But I probably won't do a big session under there on a very sunny, warm morning like I did last time.
That was me, wasn't it?
It was you. It was like it started out, the temperature was great. And about halfway through your talk, people are like fanning themselves, and then they're getting up and walking towards the edges. And I was like, okay, we won't do the first session under here anymore unless it's cooler out.
I felt like I was an old time summer preacher,
Yeah, the barn door type walls would be cool with tracks, especially if I can take them all the way off and store them somewhere when I just don't want any walls. That's a great idea. So, okay, well, we're coming up on an hour and a half here, Tim. I know we need to talk about this troll though, because you're trying to monetize a troll right now. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that was fun. So I mean, okay, I had to channel my inner John Willis this morning, last night, but so if a lot of people out there probably know Brian Alexovich from the Lots Project, good buddy of mine, and we bounce things off. He put out a video the other morning, a stitch video on TikTok. If you don't know what that is, somebody asks a question and then you respond. So his was, what is your big goal for this year? And so I was up having coffee with the puppies and I said, well, my goal is by the end of 2023 to have enough coming in from my content creation that we could live off it if we wanted to. Now I'm 25% the way there. So that means I've already gone from 0 to 25. And so my goal is by the end of this year to at least have enough, that's part of the business. And that's a big goal for me, but it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so some guy who doesn't know me from Adam and has 200 followers on TikTok and doesn't have a single video said, well, maybe it could happen, but not with the tool videos you make. And I'm like, hey, okay, dude, you don't know me from Adam. So his username was Mitch something. And so I did a nice 1-minute video and I said, here's the deal. You're going to put your goals on the line. When you make them public to people, people are going to shit on you. And usually it's going to be people who haven't done anything or aren't doing a whole lot because jealous, whatever it happens to be. So I said, here's the deal. we're going to create a coupon code. So my big thing, if people want to support me, is the Patch of the Month Club. It all started with that guy right there. Been prepping since Y2K. Looks like that Best Buy sticker.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this cool thing where we send out every month for $10 a month or $100 a year. You get one of these cool Velcro patches, because preppers and homesteaders, we all seem to love these. You know, even people who only have one hat with Velcro, you can swap them out. So I said, here's the deal. Tim's video is gold. Thank you, lady. So I created a coupon code called Mitch. And if you go on patchofthemonth.co and you sign up using that coupon code, I'm going to send you this Been Prepping Since Y2K and this really cool die cut Toolman Tim patch for free with your first subscription, because I'm going to make money off of somebody shitting on me. So there it is. And if I get one subscriber, I'll get more than that. But if I get one subscriber from Mitch, you succeeded, buddy. And in December of this year, I'm going to go back and respond to that comment. And I'm going to say, hey, guess what? I did it. Yeah. And there you go. What have you done? Still no videos, whatever. So there we are. Not trying to be a dick, just trying to make lemonade out of lemons. And there we are.
Yeah, well, the sofa referees have a lot to say about what we're doing. I've noticed that.
Yeah, they do. Very full of opinions for sure. So yeah, it is what it is. And you know what? I let that go. The thing is, and I tell everybody, don't let those comments bug you. And I let 99% of those comments slide. But that one just bit me in the craw. I don't know if it caught me at a bad time or what. But I said, frig it. I'm gonna do what John Willis says, and I'm gonna monetize the trolls for once. Yeah. And so, you know, I don't I don't discount that other than the $100 for the year. But what I will do is I'll sure as shit throw in some cool free patches to sweeten the pot, simply because Mitch caught me at the wrong time.
All right. Don't forget, guys.
Yes.
Mitch as your coupon code. All right. Well, Tim, thanks for being on today. If people want to follow you or all that, how do they do that?
Oh, there's 100 places. TikTok, YouTube. But the easiest way to find all my places is toolmantim.co. If you go by there, you'll find me. I'm everywhere. We stream. I've got the workshop podcast, which is now 4 times a week. Three live streams a week, typically Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'm in all the places. We stream on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Telegram, Facebook. Yeah, all of them. I think 8 places we're streaming right now. And and TikTok sometimes. I figured out how to stream on TikTok at the same time, as long as it's not an interview. So if you want to follow me, you can find me for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me again.